Kate, what's your favorite?
I'm going to go with Writing Through Hell.
Because
I love how Cage renders the starry dynamo the method rather than the meaning.
Oh, nice. That is so perfect. Fabulous. Okay. Amber Rose, you're up, and let's say Sophia is on deck.
I don't know that it's my favorite poem, but I'm going to put up Mac Lowe's A Vocabulary for Peter Innisfree Moore.
Nice.
And I'm putting that up if only because I just really appreciate all of the forms in which we engage with the poem, and especially the visual element. And I think it can open a really exciting conversation about what we mean by chance.
Love it. Okay, great. Sophia and Jason will be on deck.
This might be cheating, but I'm just going to say Bernadette Mayer's writing experiments.
Why is it cheating?
Oh, yeah. I'm attracted to this idea that we can extend our days and build time for writing in all we have to do. And I like thinking of writing as something we equally have to do in our day.
Mm-hmm. So Bernadette inspires us or creates ways for us to be maybe not inspired, but to write anyway. That is so cool. Good. Helpful. Incredibly practical. Okay, Jason's up with Dave on deck.
Yeah, I guess I'll pull forward Shorter American Memory of the Declaration of Independence by Rosemary Waldrop. Mainly because, I really like the N+7 experiments because of the ghost of the original text that remains kind of hovering behind.
Yeah.
And and it's just, and this Waldrop poem is just kind of so wise in what it ends up saying. Like, we holler these trysts to be self-exiled, that all manatees are credited equidistant. And I just love that equidistant of thinking about the manatees all spaced out, far away enough from each other to not touch.
Oh, those manatees. And isn't it great that man, I think it's man, became manatee, because manatees are so close in intelligence and sensitivity, apparently, to what humans like to be when they're good.
Right.
And yet we are not very friendly to the manatees, let's just say. So that's like perfect, right? Okay. Dave is up with Max on deck.
The thing I love the most about this week is actually not a poem, but a sort of a story about John Cage. And I forget exactly where I read it. It was definitely in ModPo, maybe even English 88, but it was, and you can correct me, if I get the facts wrong, but it was where Cage was invited to speak, or he was accepting an award, and he prepared ahead of time 6 responses to questions and planned to just read the responses in order, regardless of the questions that were asked. And he apparently gave that speech, that question and answer period. It went over very well. People thought it was great. And then later he revealed, I prepared this ahead of time. It was not even tracking at all, but it doesn't even matter. But I just thought that was just a really cool example of what he was trying to do.
It was a perfect example. And in fact, it took a long time for them to figure out. Some people did figure it out and walked out. And a lot of people walked out of Cage performances, for sure, which was a whole thing. Now we'll go to Max with Gabby on deck.
Yeah, I'll plug a classic, Jenna Osmond's Dropping Leaflets, which I think really captures the spirit of play, of sort of material or engagement with the text as an object, while also searching for some kind of political potential in these sorts of procedures. Like what comes out of these kinds of sometimes very conceptual, sometimes rather time-consuming procedures. Aside from a poem, is there some sort of political element to it?
Yeah, There certainly is, because it was a post 9/11 poem. Let's go to Gabby, followed by Jake.
Yeah, two brief shout outs. One is also the Bernadette Mayer experiments. I feel like I still, to this day, after several books, like turn to those at moments of what we might call writer's block, or if I'm not working on a distinct project. Like I just find them really generative, and they're kind of easy, and I mean that in not a value judgment. They're really interesting, and I like, one of the ones I like doing is the writing in a place that feels I forget exactly the word.
Least congenial.
Least congenial, yes, which is just a great way of putting it. The second thing I want to do is just mark something that's not completely at all in any of our syllabi, which is I am a big believer in the John Cage sonatas and interludes for prepared piano, which is basically he sticks a bunch of nails inside of the strings of pianos and just fucks them up and makes some really beautiful music with it. And I just think it's a good, like, I mean, you know, we talk a lot about things like Dada and the kind of lineages that these people are coming from, and that just feels like actually a very good analog in music for what we're doing this week in poetry.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to Jake, followed by Allie.
Two things. One, I got to give a shout out to Jason's poem, the butter poem.
It's called Making Butter, I believe, right?
And I always want to read it to people, and I have to remember that, like, not everybody. It is a raunchy poem, so I have to remember who else is around when I'm reading it. Very different. Jackson McClow's "Call Me Ishmael."
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic poem in ModPo Plus. In general, I like Jackson McClow's stuff. This one, especially, it just has so much music built into it. There's a very specific formula of recurrences of certain words, certain kinds of words. There's like a specific extraction model that works there, and it just ends up being so lyrical and musical, and I love the way it flows and interacts with the original.
After I say a sentence or two about it, could you read the first couple of lines? So what Jackson did is he did his procedure, computer generated programming procedure, on the opening of Moby Dick, right? The famous "Call Me Ishmael." This was in 1960. It was a long time ago, and what came out of that procedure, that aleatory practice, is just a marvelous thing that he did not create himself, but actually Melville had the music was latent in the Melville, and this is the great thing about this week. So do you want to read just a little bit of it with your poet voice?
Yeah, sure. First two stanzas. Circulation and long mind every interest, somehow mind and every long coffin about little money, especially I sure having money about especially little.
I just love that
Such
poem.
a great reader.
Yeah, Jake's the best. And I mean, one can see Ishmael, who's kind of run out of money and has a hankering to go to the sea and keeps following funeral processions, and he just really, he knows it's time. It's time to set out. And of course, he picks the wrong boat. Boy, does he pick the wrong boat. And there's something so premonition-y about that piece that Jackson produced. Allie, followed by Lainey.
I'm glad that Jake shouted out Making Butter, because I love that poem. I'm gonna also mention Take Us Back to Vocabulary for Peter and His Free More by Jackson McClow. Because I think that allowing yourself to like really listen and like experience that poem judgmentally for a second. I like forgot how to I literally
adverbs are not necessary.
Like just profoundly opens you up both to chance and just like the act of listening, which is kind of like necessary for any art making endeavor. And so I think kind of like moving past maybe the kind of like surface weirdness or like discordance or like whatever it is entering a vocabulary is a really great place to kind of like start in week 9 because it just kind of like speaks to being open to like everything in your environment.
Yes, being open to everything in your environment, exactly. And that's what Peter Innisfree Moore, as a photographer, is trying to capture in his photographs. Let's go to Lainey, and then I want to put Dylan on the spot for a second. So can you hand the mic to Dylan before we turn to Julia? Okay. Lainey, what's your favorite?
I will choose Rosemary Waldrop's shorter American Memory of the Declaration of Independence. One of the things I love is that she's not just wise, but she's really funny. And if you listen to the recording that we have on Penn Sound, you'll notice that she says that she started with a bigger book of history, and hers is called Shorter American Memory because it's shorter. But of course, there's also the pun on American memory being short, which she doesn't say that obvious because we already know that. And also listening to Jason speak about manatees, and also this question of, well, ModPo poets sometimes being known for one poem, like Jenna Osmond's Dropping Leaflets, makes me think of Anne Waldman's Manatee Humanity, which is one of my favorite Anne Waldman books. So I just wanted to shout that out.